He didn't say it with anger. He said it like a fact, like weather. "Graves are warmer," Owen muttered, tossing the blanket at my feet. And just like that, my bones went colder than they already were. I sat there, frozen, on the edge of the pull-out bed in the attic, still wrapped in the cardigan I'd worn since morning. The draft came from the window he always forgot to close. I had simply asked softly if he could bring me an extra blanket from the hall closet. It was past midnight, and the house was asleep, except me and apparently Owen, glowing blue in the face from whatever game he couldn't put down. I hadn't knocked on his door to lecture. I hadn't said a word about the plates under his bed or the clothes on the floor. I'd only whispered from the hallway, "Sweetheart, would you mind bringing me a blanket? I'm a little cold." He didn't even look at me. By the time I bent to pick up the blanket from the floor, he was gone. Door shut. Clicked. No goodnight. Not even a joke. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stood there, blanket in hand, staring into the dark hallway like maybe someone would come say, "He didn't mean it, Maeve." But no one did. That was the difference between discomfort and clarity. Discomfort makes you shift in your seat. Clarity makes you stand up. The attic had no insulation. When they first moved me up here, they said they'd renovate it soon. That was 5 winters ago. At first, it was a temporary solution, just until the baby was born, just until they figured out school, just until the guest room stopped being an office. Just. I was always happy to help. They were family. Family means you don't need a door to your room. Family means you cook without being asked, and never mind the thanks. Family means they roll their eyes when you talk about landlines or prices in the 80s. And family means, apparently, when you ask for warmth, your grandson thinks of death before comfort. I curled up on the bed and pulled the blanket around me, thin as it was. My knees ached. My chest felt hollow in a way no one saw. You can get used to anything, until one day, you can't. That night, I didn't sleep. The clock blinked 2:13, then 3:42, then 5:01. I lay still, counting the ways I'd made myself small. How many birthdays I had baked for. How many mornings I'd made lunches while everyone else was still brushing their teeth. How often I had said, "No, I'm fine," when I wasn't. At 6:05, the sky began to pale. I got up, my joints cracking like kindling. I made the bed, brushed my hair, put on my softest sweater. The green one, Henry always said, made me look like a leaf in spring. I tiptoed downstairs. The kitchen was quiet. A few cereal bowls still on the table, the usual trail of crumbs. I made coffee. Nobody came down. I sat by the window, steam rising from my mug, and looked at the yard. October light. Damp grass. Mailbox tilting like it, too, had grown tired of holding things that weren't meant for it. It wasn't about the blanket. It was about the last 5 years. It was about how silence became the language we spoke, how asking became begging, how dignity was something you wrapped in foil and set quietly on the table so no one would say you were bitter. At 6:47 a.m., I opened my laptop, typed, "One-way bus ticket, Oregon coast." Click. The page loaded slowly, as if even the internet was asking, "Are you sure?" Yes. Yes, I was. By the time the others came down, I had already cleared the kitchen. The bowls were in the sink, the counter wiped. I moved quietly, not out of courtesy, but out of habit. The kind you don't notice forming until it's the only rhythm you know. The twins were first, stomping down the stairs like colts on linoleum, arguing about a charger. No "good morning" Not even a glance. I poured more coffee and watched them tear open a cereal box I'd bought last week. No one else ever seemed to notice it was me restocking the pantry. Groceries didn't appear by magic, but apparently I did. Next came Lisa, my daughter. 41, tired-eyed, and already typing something into her phone. She sat at the table, still in her robe, sighing like the day had insulted her personally. "Morning, Mom," she said, without looking up. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. She didn't notice. I moved to the sink, rinsing a plate that wasn't mine, while the words from the night before looped in my head like a scratched record. Graves are warmer. It wasn't the cruelty. Children say cruel things. Teenagers even more so. It was the absence of response. No footsteps behind him. No door opening again with, "I'm sorry, Gran." No Lisa coming upstairs to ask, "What happened?" They had given him their silence, and in doing so, had given him permission. Lisa stood to make her smoothie, blender roaring as if it were punishing the fruit. I dried my hands on the towel, folded it neatly, and laid it beside the sink. My coffee had gone cold. "You didn't sleep?" she asked, pausing between blend cycles. "No," I said. She frowned at her phone again. "Well, I hope you can nap today. Owen's still asleep, but he's got a big test this afternoon. He's been under pressure. Try not to take things personally. Try not to take things personally." My God. That's what they'd say when I was erased. When one day I'd slip on the porch or forget to turn off the oven, and they'd sigh over paperwork saying, "She means well," as if I were already past use. I took a breath. "Lisa," I said evenly, "I won't be here tonight." She looked up. "What do you mean?" "I'll be staying in town, just overnight." "Is something wrong?" "Wrong?" I wanted to laugh, but I didn't. "Just something I need to do," I said. She narrowed her eyes. "Is this about last night?" I shook my head slowly. "It's not about one night." She didn't like that answer. The twins were still arguing. Owen's door creaked upstairs. Lisa's phone buzzed again. And I, Mavelyn Joyce, became invisible in real time. At 8:10, I stepped out onto the porch. A chill in the air. I wore my husband's scarf around my neck, and in my coat pocket, 3 things: my wallet, my ID, and a folded piece of paper with a ticket number on it. Bus to Astoria, 11:00 a.m. They didn't ask where I was going. They didn't stop me. They didn't even follow me to the door. When the bus pulled into the Greyhound station, I stood quietly among the strangers. A girl with a backpack larger than she was. A man tapping a cigarette on his phone case. An older woman in church shoes reading a Bible with a cracked spine. Nobody asked me what I was running from. That was the first gift of the day. I stepped onto the bus and found a seat by the window. The vinyl cracked beneath me. The air smelled like exhaust and coffee from someone's thermos. I didn't care. I was gone. Out the window, the town rolled past like a film I'd watched too many times. The gas station where Henry once fixed the flat. The thrift store I used to volunteer at before my help was needed more at home. The stretch of highway that led nowhere for miles. I didn't cry. I just watched. And when we passed the sign that read, "Thank you for visiting Somerville," I whispered, "You're welcome." The hotel was small, unassuming, and quiet. The kind you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. That's why I chose it. No lobby music, no over-friendly receptionists. Just an old man behind a counter who looked up from his newspaper and nodded. "Name?" he asked. "Maeve Joyce." He checked the list. "Room 6. End of the hall. I paid in cash. He didn't ask for more. Inside, the room smelled like soap and pine cleaner. One double bed, one worn armchair, a small desk under the window. No art on the walls. Just beige silence. I set down my bag and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar stillness. I had no one to make tea for, no one to cook for, no schedules to memorize, no noise behind every thought. Just breath. I took off my coat and folded it over the back of the chair, pulled out my notebook, began to write. Step 1. Finances. I had made the first move, but now I needed to draw the line fully, on paper, with numbers. It had been too long since I looked at my accounts not through the lens of what someone needed from me, but what I needed to live. I took the bus downtown. The branch office of my credit union stood between a shuttered diner and a nail salon. The same place Henry and I opened our first savings account after the war. The teller, a polite man in his 30s, glanced at my ID and smiled. "How can I help you today, Miss Joyce?" "I need to make some changes," I said, and laid my notebook on the counter. In it, every auto payment linked to Lisa's household, mortgage contributions, school tuition withdrawals, utility bills, a monthly deposit into something labeled Family Essentials, which apparently included streaming services, sports fees, and organic snacks no one ever offered me. "I want all of these canceled." The man blinked. "All of them?" "Yes." He looked at the list again. "These accounts have been active for years." "I'm aware," I said calmly. He hesitated. "We may need to verify. Some of these are joint access." "With your daughter?" "They were." I took out the legal folder I had prepared months ago and never had the courage to use. "Here is my sole authorization notice, filed last spring, just never activated, until now." He read it, nodded. "Yes, ma'am. We'll begin the process today. Some may take a few business days." "I'll wait." He glanced at me, uncertain. "May I ask, is everything okay?" I gave him the same answer I'd given every doctor since I turned 60. "As okay as it needs to be." On my way out, I passed a woman my age, arguing on the phone. "Well, if you needed the money, you could have asked like a decent son." Her voice was tight, not angry, just tired. I caught her eye. We shared a small, flickering look, like veterans passing in a hallway. Back at the hotel, I made myself tea from the lobby's sad little stash. Sat by the window. Watched the streetlights blink on. My phone buzzed. Missed call. Lisa. 3 times. Then Owen. Then home. No voicemail. They didn't leave words. They left silence, like punishment. It used to scare me. But silence now was just quiet. At 7:43 p.m., a text arrived. "Lisa. The school just called. Payment didn't go through. Did something happen? No. Are you okay? No. Where are you? Just the transaction that failed." I didn't answer. A second text followed. "Lisa. Did you cancel everything?" "Mom, we needed that. We have responsibilities." I typed slowly, thumb deliberate. Me. So did I. I powered off the phone and set it face down. That night, I slept under a blanket that didn't smell like someone else's cologne, in a room that didn't echo with footsteps above my head. No shouting, no cold drafts, no explanations. And for the first time in 5 years, I slept through the night. The phone was back on by morning only because I needed to check the bus schedule, not because I expected anything different from the messages. But there it was, 11 missed calls, 7 texts, 2 voicemails. None from Owen. "Lisa. You've made your point. Can we talk now?" Lisa. "You're punishing the whole family for one bad night?" Lisa. "Mom, this isn't like you." Lisa, did someone put this idea in your head? Lisa, can you please just call me back? I didn't. Instead, I opened my small notebook and crossed out 2 lines: school payments and monthly grocery deposit. The ink smeared slightly. My hand was steadier than yesterday. The third voicemail was from Lisa's husband, Andrew. His voice was clipped, low. Maeve, it's Andrew. I don't know what's going on, but we've got bills due this week. Lisa's upset. Owen's got finals. This really isn't the time. Let's be reasonable. Let's be reasonable. They always used that line when they were losing the upper hand. They said it when I asked why I was never included in decisions. They said it when I questioned why I wasn't allowed downstairs when company came over. That word, reasonable, wasn't about kindness. It was about control. At 10 a.m., I took a cab to the legal office listed on the back of my estate binder. An older gentleman greeted me in the waiting room. His name was Mr. Delano. He had kind eyes, an over-ironed collar, and the same leather chair I remembered from the time Henry and I did our first will. I wasn't sure you'd ever come back, he said gently. Neither was I. We went over the details. My accounts. The trust fund I'd created for emergency family support. The one Lisa didn't know existed because it had never been used the way I'd imagined. I want to dissolve the shared oversight, I said. Going forward, all discretion is mine alone. Any changes to your will? I hesitated. Yes. I took a deep breath. Remove Lisa as primary beneficiary. He looked up. Assign that portion to my niece, Becca Morgan. Lives in Ohio. Has never asked me for a dime. He nodded and began typing. And the small account Henry left for Owen, I added. Keep it. But make it contingent on a letter. A letter? A personal one. If he wants it, he has to write me one, explaining why. Mr. Delano paused, then smiled slightly. Understood. After we finished, he handed me a copy of the revisions to review. I slipped it into my bag without looking. I knew what it said. Outside, the wind had picked up, the kind that smells like fall coming too fast. I wrapped my scarf tighter and walked 2 blocks without thinking, just to move. Ended up at a diner, vinyl booths, real sugar on the table, the kind of place nobody judged you for sitting alone. The waitress, no older than 20, refilled my coffee without asking. Cold day for a walk? I smiled. Cold is relative? She nodded, not understanding, but trying. When I returned to the hotel, there were more messages. Now Owen's name showed up. Owen. So you're just ditching us? Owen. Whatever. I knew you were dramatic. Owen. You didn't even say goodbye. Owen. Grandma? That last one caught in my throat. But I didn't respond. Instead, I turned to a fresh page in my notebook. Next steps. Find long-term place. Cancel storage unit at Lisa's. Ship boxes to new address. Change mailing address. Find dentist. Find doctor. Find life. I underlined that last part twice. Then I made tea and sat by the window and waited for the moment where I felt guilt again. It didn't come. By the 3rd morning away, the panic in their messages had shifted tone. Less outrage, more bargaining. Lisa. Mom, please, we need to sort this out. Andrew. This is going to ruin Owen's semester. Please think of him. Lisa. Where are you staying? Are you safe? We can talk if you come home? No one asked why I left. No one asked what I needed. Just what I could still give. I shut the phone off again and laid it on the nightstand. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish from the cleaner who'd passed through while I was out. The sheets were crisp. The silence had begun to feel like something I owned, like a small animal resting on my lap, purring. I pulled out the notebook and began a new page. What I actually need: a roof where the door locks from the inside, a window that opens without sticking, a kitchen where every drawer belongs to me, a chair no one else will take, a garden, even if it's just pots on a stoop, a place where my name isn't a burden. I added, almost without thinking, salt air. I stared at the words. Oregon coast. Henry and I had gone once, 35 years ago. A motel on a cliffside, the kind where the fog rolled in so thick you thought the world ended at the balcony. We'd eaten chowder in paper cups, and he'd said, "If we ever run away, let's run here." I'd forgotten that. Or maybe I'd just buried it under casseroles and permission slips. I opened the laptop and typed, Oregon Coast Rental. The first listing was a one-bedroom cottage in a small town 2 hours north of Astoria. White siding, blue shutters, a porch barely big enough for a chair. The kind of place people call cozy before they know what loneliness feels like. But it was enough. It was mine. I clicked Request Info. Then I called the bus line. "Can I change my ticket?" "You can upgrade to a through fare," the man said. "Straight to Seabright. Leaves Friday." "Friday's fine," I said. "One ticket." When I hung up, my hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. I was just moving. That evening, I walked to the drugstore for toothpaste. The clerk, a boy with a pierced eyebrow, bagged my items and said, "You're not from around here, are you?" "No," I smiled. "But maybe I will be." Back in my room, I opened my suitcase. Began to sort. Half of what I'd packed I didn't need. The dress Lisa had bought me for some holiday party I'd been too tired to attend. The mug Owen had given me for Mother's Day. He'd found it at a yard sale. Chipped, but with "World's Best Grandma" fading on the side. I held it for a long time, thumb over the crack. I put it back in the suitcase. Not everything had to be left behind. By the time the streetlights flickered on, my bag was lighter. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 sweaters, the scarf Henry loved, his old watch, a paperback with a bookmark from page 47, and the little box where I kept the note he'd written before surgery. "Don't forget who you are, Maeve." I sat on the bed, the box in my lap. Outside, cars hissed through puddles. Someone's dog barked twice. Somewhere, Lisa was probably at the kitchen table, scrolling through bank apps, trying to make numbers work without me. Owen might be on his phone, rehearsing what to say when he saw me again. But this wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. Friday, I would leave this town not as a ghost slipping out, but as a woman walking away on her own legs, with her own ticket, with her own plan. I placed the note back into the box, closed the lid, and whispered it out loud for the first time in years. Don't forget who you are. Thursday dawned gray and damp, a sky the color of pewter. From my hotel window, I could see gulls wheeling over the parking lot, crying at nothing. I sipped weak coffee from a styrofoam cup and stared at the street below. Tomorrow, I would be gone. But today still belonged to this in-between life, one foot out the door, one still hovering over the threshold. I pulled my coat on and went outside. The air smelled like wet asphalt. A small bakery across the street had just flipped its open sign. Inside, the glass case gleamed with cinnamon rolls and croissants. I ordered one of each, not because I could eat them, but because I liked the look of abundance on the plate. I took a seat by the window. For the first time in years, I had breakfast that I didn't prepare for someone else. At the next table, a young mother was cutting a muffin for her toddler. She glanced at me, smiled, and said, "They grow fast." I nodded. Faster than you think. Her little boy reached for the sugar packets. She laughed, gently moved them away, and kept talking to him. It was such a simple thing, attention, that it made my chest ache. I wondered if Lisa had ever looked at Owen like that. Maybe she had. Maybe she still did. Maybe we all become different people when exhaustion turns to habit. I finished half a croissant and wrapped the rest in a napkin for later. On the walk back to the hotel, I stopped at a stationery shop and bought a small pack of lined envelopes. If I was going to leave, I wanted to do it in writing, not as a text, not as a voicemail. A letter. Something that said, I was here. You may not have noticed, but I was here. Back in the room, I laid the envelopes on the desk and took out my pen. But the words didn't come yet. My mind was too crowded. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I cooked for myself. There was a small communal kitchen off the hotel lobby, nothing fancy, just a stove, a sink, a pot. I bought some vegetables from a corner store and made a soup Henry used to like. Onions, potatoes, a little dill. The smell filled the empty space, and for a moment it felt like home. Not Lisa's house, not the attic, not even the home Henry and I built. Just a room where I belonged. The desk clerk passed through, sniffed the air. Smells amazing, he said. Old recipe, I answered. He smiled. You here for long? No, I said. Just long enough. I carried the bowl upstairs and ate slowly at the desk. The spoon clinked softly against the china. Each bite warmed me more than any blanket had in years. Around noon, the phone buzzed again. Messages from Lisa, shorter now. Lisa. Mom, please. We don't know what to do. Owen's upset. Andrew's furious. Can you just come back and we'll figure it out? Then another, softer. Lisa. I didn't know he said that to you last night. I'm sorry. I should have been there. Please call me. I set the phone down, face up. Watched the screen go dark. My hand hovered over it, then pulled back. Not yet. I turned to my notebook instead. Packing list. Ticket ID, Henry's scarf. Watch note box. Mug underneath, I added. Courage. I drew a box around the word. It was only 1:15 p.m., but I already felt tomorrow pressing against me like a tide. The difference between running away and walking away was planning, and for the first time, I wasn't running. I folded the envelopes and slid them into my bag. The words would come later, when I was ready, not when they demanded. Downstairs, the soup pot still smelled of dill. The desk clerk had ladled himself a bowl. This is incredible, he said when he saw me. I smiled. Keep the recipe, I told him. It's for days when you remember you deserve to be fed. The lawyer's office smelled like dry paper and carpet glue, a place where decisions outlived the people who made them. The walls were lined with shelves of red folders, names stamped in gold, dates that stretched back decades. Everything here was quiet, measured, irrevocable. My appointment was at 10 a.m. Mr. Delano greeted me with a warm nod and no small talk. That was what I liked about him. He didn't act surprised that I was doing what I was doing, as if a woman in her 70s finally taking back her life was a perfectly ordinary Tuesday. Shall we go over the documents one more time? He asked, already opening the folder labeled Maeve Joyce. I sat across from him. Let's. We went through each page. Revocation of financial power of attorney previously shared with Lisa. Establishment of sole control over all assets and investments. Amendments to my will. Lisa removed as primary. Becca Morgan listed instead. Trust fund assigned for my own care, not family emergencies. Small educational fund for Owen, still intact, but locked behind one condition. A letter. in his own hand. "Is this too harsh?" I asked, not because I doubted myself, but because some small part of me had been trained to apologize for drawing breath. Mr. Delano didn't flinch. "It's measured. It's your right. It's overdue." I signed. My hand didn't shake. When it was done, he folded the documents into a large envelope and slid them across the desk. "This is yours. Keep it somewhere safe." "I will." He hesitated before standing. "Can I ask you something, Ms. Joyce?" "Of course. Do you want to send them copies?" I thought for a long moment, then shook my head. "Let them feel the absence first. The paper can come later." He nodded. "Fair." Outside, the wind had picked up again. I paused on the steps, envelope tucked under my arm, and looked up at the sky. Blue pushing through clouds. A moment of stillness, and then, without warning, tears welled. Not grief, not anger, relief. The kind that comes when you finally step out from under a weight so old, you forgot it wasn't part of your spine. I walked to the cafe 2 blocks over, sat in a corner booth, ordered a sandwich I didn't need and coffee I wouldn't finish. I just wanted to sit, to feel what it was like to exist in a space that didn't ask for anything from me. While I was there, I took out the blank envelopes again, wrote 3 names: Lisa Andrew Owen. I stared at them, no words yet, but now they had shape. Now they had direction. When I got back to the hotel, the messages had multiplied. Lisa: "Mom, you don't have to cut us out like this." Lisa: "It's not fair." Andrew: "We've supported you too, you know." Lisa: "Owen's been crying. Are you really going to let this be the last thing between you?" The last thing? They thought it was final. They thought the conversation had ended when I left. No. This wasn't the end of a conversation. This was the first time I'd spoken. I didn't reply. Not yet. I repacked my suitcase. Folded each item with care. Not rushed. Not afraid. I placed the lawyer's envelope on the bottom, beneath the sweaters. Then the notebooks. Then the mug. Everything else could be replaced. Everything that mattered, I was bringing with me. At 5, I ate the rest of yesterday's soup. Poured myself a small glass of wine I'd picked up at the corner store. Held it up to the window. "To Henry," I whispered. "Who knew I'd do this someday? Even when I didn't." Outside, a dog barked in the alley. A couple laughed on the sidewalk. Somewhere, life kept spinning, but tonight I was no longer on the edge of it. I was stepping back in. I woke before dawn. No alarm, no knocking, no footsteps overhead. Just the soft silence of a room that didn't belong to anyone else. I stretched, slowly, bones reluctant but responsive. My hands found the edge of the quilt, warm from my own heat, not borrowed from someone else's thermostat, not dependent on anyone's permission. Today was Friday. Today I was leaving. I brewed a cup of hotel coffee, bitter and thin, but drank it anyway. My bag sat by the door, zipped and ready. The envelopes were tucked inside, unsigned. The lawyer's documents wrapped in a scarf. The mug cradled in a sweater to keep it from breaking. Nothing left to do but wait. Still, my fingers itched. My mind paced. I opened the small suitcase again, not to add or remove, but to see, to remember. Tucked between 2 folded shirts was a plain cardboard box, small, the corners soft from time. I pulled it out and sat cross-legged on the bed, the box in my lap. The lid slid off with a familiar whisper. Inside, Henry's old wristwatch stopped at 4:18 p.m., the time of his surgery. A ribbon from a county fair pie contest I'd entered in 1981. The train ticket stub from our honeymoon, and a card. Simple. faded blue. Inside, his handwriting, the lines slightly slanted from the pain in his wrist that he never talked about. Don't forget who you are, Maeve. I ran my finger over the words. How many times had I read them? Dozens? Hundreds? But always in secret. Always with the shame of needing the reminder. As if remembering yourself were weakness, not survival. I slipped the card into my coat pocket. I wanted it near. At 7:45, I took the elevator down. The lobby was empty. I left the room key on the counter with a note. Thank you for the quiet. Outside, the air smelled of damp leaves and morning bread from the bakery across the street. I crossed slowly, suitcase wheels ticking softly on the sidewalk. I bought a roll, still warm. Took a seat at the window. The same girl from before was working the counter. She smiled at me like I was a regular. Maybe I was. At 8:15, the phone rang again. Lisa. I didn't answer. Then another call. Not Lisa. A different name. Owen. I stared at the screen. Let it ring. A part of me imagined his voice. Would he say he was sorry? Or just scared? Would he apologize? Or plead? The phone fell silent. Then a message. Just one line. Are you really gone? I didn't know what to say. I took out one of the envelopes. Wrote his name again. Carefully, slowly. Thought about what he might need to hear one day. Not now. But maybe when he's 35 or 42, and wondering why the people who raised him became shadows. I would tell him the truth. But not today. At 9, I hailed a cab. The driver, middle-aged, smelled of mint gum and wintergreen. He didn't talk. I liked him immediately. Bus station, please, I said. He nodded and pulled into traffic. I watched the town roll past. The used bookstore I hadn't entered. The park bench I sat on that second night. The alley where someone's cat always appeared just after dark. My days here had been brief, but they'd been mine. Every step I took was mine. Every silence I chose. Every boundary I drew. At the station, the bus was already idling. The driver took my bag with a nod. You heading to the coast? He asked. I am. Good place to disappear. I smiled. I'm not disappearing. I'm arriving. He tipped his cap. Even better. I climbed the steps, chose a window seat halfway back. The vinyl squeaked. The engine hummed. I leaned my head against the glass. As the bus pulled away, I didn't look back. Not at the hotel. Not at the street. Not at the version of myself I'd shed like a second skin. Ahead was the road, long and open. And somewhere along it, Maeve. The one Henry believed in. The one I had almost forgotten. They didn't wait long. By the time the bus crossed the county line, my phone was vibrating in my pocket. Over and over, not buzzing like worry, buzzing like alarm, buzzing like someone realizing the faucet they'd ignored had flooded the whole house. I didn't look at it. I let the calls stack. It wasn't until the second rest stop, just past the lumber mill and the rusted sign for the peach farm, that I checked the screen. 12 missed calls, 8 texts, 1 voicemail, all from Lisa. Then a new name blinked at the top. Andrew, followed by a simple sentence. What you're doing is cruel. I read it twice. Cruel. Was it cruel to stop being used? Was it cruel to say no more after years of unthanked labor? Was it cruel to reclaim a life I had shelved for their convenience? Cruel. I put the phone down on the empty seat beside me and turned back to the window. Trees blurred past, miles and miles of pine. Every now and then, a break in the woods showed a slice of sky, wide and unworried. My throat tightened, but not from sadness. from knowing finally that I didn't owe anyone a performance. At the next town, I got off briefly to stretch my legs. The sun was peeking through now, slanting in low and gold across the pavement. The bus driver leaned against the open door, sipping a soda. "Long ride?" he asked. "Long life," I said. He laughed. "Ain't that the truth?" I smiled. "But it's not over yet." Back on the bus, I turned my phone back on. This time, I listened to the voicemail. Lisa's voice, thin and sharp. "Mom, I don't understand what this is. I don't even know what you want from us. You can't just vanish and freeze us out like this. Owen's a wreck. Andrew's furious. You've put me in an impossible position." I paused it there. Rewound. "You've put me in an impossible position." As if my existence had always been something to manage. As if I were a tax bracket, not a person. I pressed delete, then typed a message. "Me, Lisa. You are not in an impossible position. You are simply in one where I am no longer funding your comfort. There is a difference. Send. No apology, no soft edges. Just the truth." Another hour passed. The landscape shifted. I could smell salt now, faint but growing. Somewhere up ahead, the ocean was waiting. I imagined the cottage again, the white siding, the chipped porch, the garden pots along the edge. It didn't matter if it was small. It was mine. And then, as if summoned by my silence, the phone buzzed again. Owen. His message was short. "Grandma, I messed up. Please come back." That one I read 3 times. It wasn't an apology, not fully. It didn't say what he'd done. It didn't say he understood. But it cracked something open, just a hairline fracture. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete it either. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope with his name on it. Slipped the card inside. No letter yet. That would come later, when I had the right words. When I knew they would be mine, and not words written out of guilt. I folded the flap closed and held it in my hands a long moment, then placed it back into the bag beside my notebook, beneath the card from Henry. As the bus turned onto the coastal highway, the world opened up in front of me. The ocean appeared like a secret suddenly remembered, vast gray blue, edged in foam. And I, Maeve Joyce, watched it roll in like proof that leaving isn't always loss. Sometimes it's the beginning of something you should have claimed a long, long time ago. The town of Seabright greeted me without fanfare. No welcome sign, no tourist shops. Just a narrow road lined with leaning pines and mailboxes that looked hand-painted. The bus pulled in beside a grocery store that doubled as the post office, and the driver helped me with my bag without a word. I thanked him, meant it, and stood on the sidewalk as the engine rumbled off. I was alone, completely, wholly, and not in the way I'd feared. It was early afternoon, the sun watery behind clouds. I walked the 2 blocks to the address I'd scribbled in my notebook. The cottage sat at the end of a gravel lane, white with blue trim, just like the photo. A rusted weather vane turned lazily above the porch. Wind chimes clinked, not in song, but in suggestion. The door had a key under the mat, as promised. Inside, the air was stale in the way that empty places always are. I opened the windows. A sea breeze pushed through like it had been waiting. The space was small. 1 bedroom, 1 narrow kitchen, a sagging sofa that smelled faintly of mothballs. The floor creaked, but it creaked with honesty. I walked through slowly, touching nothing yet, just taking it in. There was no attic, no stairs, no voices above my head. This was the whole house. It would never be grand, but it was enough. I set down my suitcase by the door, and I breathed. Later, I walked into town. It took 7 minutes. I counted. There was a library, a hardware store, a diner, and a bench facing the ocean that looked like it had known years of secrets. I bought groceries: a half-gallon of milk, bread, eggs, apples, tea. No one looked twice at me. That was the best part. Back at the cottage, I unpacked. Slowly, deliberately. Each item had a place now. The mug went beside the sink. Henry's scarf over the chair. The notebook on the nightstand. The card stayed in my coat pocket. Close. The sun dipped behind the trees by the time I boiled water for tea. I drank it sitting on the porch. A gull screamed somewhere. The wind lifted the edge of the rug. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. What I felt was settled, like a stone finally touching the bottom of the river. Then came the woman. She walked up the lane with a basket in her hands, wearing a red cardigan and gray sneakers. Maybe my age, maybe older. Her hair was wild in the wind, but her steps were sure. "You must be Maeve," she said, stopping at the bottom of the steps. "I am. I'm June. I live 2 doors down." She held out the basket. "Peach muffins. They're not good, but they're warm." I smiled and stood. "That's better than most things." She handed them over. "Saw the lights on? Figured you moved in today. People don't last long in this place. Too quiet for them." "I don't mind quiet," I said. She squinted at me, a little grin forming. "Then you might just make it." We talked a few minutes. Nothing deep, just where's the best coffee and how the power flickers during storms. Then she waved and left, just as unbothered as she'd come. The screen door banged gently behind her. I sat down again, muffins warm through the towel, and I laughed, not loudly, not bitterly, just enough. A quiet laugh, like a door creaking open in the mind, the kind that says, "You're still here." That night, I wrote in my notebook. Not a letter, not yet, but a sentence. Sometimes, leaving isn't the bravest thing you do, it's the first honest one. The next morning brought fog, low and thick, curling around the porch posts like it belonged there. I opened the front door barefoot, mug in hand, and stood just past the screen. The world looked faded, like someone had drawn it in charcoal and smudged the edges. I liked it. Out here, nothing rushed, not even light. I made breakfast slowly. Eggs, toast, half an apple, and sat at the kitchen table where the window fogged with steam. The salt in the air crept into everything. My clothes, the wooden spoons, the space behind my ears. It was like being baptized again, only this time by wind. Around 9, I wandered down to the library. It was smaller than I expected, just 2 rooms in a converted church, shelves where pews had once been. A bell above the door jingled as I stepped inside. The woman behind the desk looked up, glasses low on her nose. "You must be the newcomer," she said. "Maeve?" "Yes." "June told us you were coming." She extended a hand. "I'm Eloise." Her grip was dry and warm. She gestured to a clipboard. "If you want a library card, just a name and address." I filled it out. "Are you a reader?" she asked. "I used to be." "Then I got busy with other people's needs?" Eloise gave a sound between a hum and a chuckle. "That happens. But books wait. They're patient like that." She handed me a card, laminated, my name in ink. "Every Thursday," she said, "we have story hour for the local kids, ages 6 to 10. Wouldn't mind a second voice if you ever feel like reading aloud." I blinked. "Me?" She smiled. "You have that kind of face, the kind that's held a lot of stories." I said I'd think about it, but already I knew I would. I left with 2 books under my arm, one poetry, one fiction. As I walked home, the fog began to lift. Sunlight streaked through the trees like fingers spreading across a table. At the cottage, I made tea and sat on the porch with the poetry book open across my knees. A line caught me by surprise. What you leave behind is not what they remember. It's what they regret. I closed the book. Let that settle. Then opened my notebook. A new page. List of things I no longer apologize for. Saying no. Needing quiet. Eating first. Locking my door. Sleeping past 6 a.m. Not answering the phone. It felt like a prayer, a kind of private scripture. In the afternoon, I walked down to the beach. The water was steel gray and choppy, foam curling at the edges. A few gulls cried over the tide, and some boy was trying to skip stones with more heart than skill. I kept my shoes on, stood near the driftwood, let the wind slap my coat open. It was all so alive, and so unlike the still, airless rooms I'd spent the last 5 years inside. When I came back, June was sitting on my porch steps. "You like chowder?" she asked. "I do." "Good. Made too much." She handed me a lidded container. "Also, the diner does half-price pie on Tuesdays. Don't let them give you the stale slices." She stood. "You settling in okay?" "I think so," I said. "You don't talk like someone running." I looked at her. "I'm not." June nodded, satisfied. "You're staying for the right reasons, then." That evening, I warmed the chowder on the stove, ate it with crackers and the last of the apple, put on a sweater and curled up with the poetry book. I fell asleep in the armchair, mouth open, book on my chest. No footsteps, no doors slamming, no guilt. Just rest. Just mine. A week passed like breath, quiet, unnoticed, and necessary. I woke each day when I pleased, ate what I liked, walked without purpose. Some days I didn't speak at all, and the silence didn't scare me. It soothed. In Seabright, no one asked what I was doing with my time. They just let me have it. On Thursday morning, I returned to the library. Eloise greeted me with a thermos of tea and a tired smile. "You're just in time. The kids are already loud." She led me to the back room, where mismatched chairs formed a circle on a faded rug. 8 children sat scattered, holding library books like shields and toys. Some were whispering, others yawning. One with a runny nose poked holes in the dust jacket of a mystery novel. "Everyone," Eloise said. "This is Miss Maeve. She's going to read to us today." A few glances. One child, the youngest, maybe 6, raised her hand. "Are you a real grandma?" The room paused. The question had weight. I nodded. "I am." That seemed to earn me something. Not awe, not fear, but a small admission into their world. I sat down, opened a book Eloise had chosen, a story about a girl and a fox. Simple, soft, with room for silence between the words. As I read, something shifted. I hadn't expected it. The way the children watched me, not as someone filling time, but as someone who mattered in this small moment. They listened. They leaned in. They let me have their attention. When I turned the last page, one girl whispered, "Can you come next week too?" I nodded. "If I'm invited." Eloise smiled from the back of the room. Afterward, as the children filed out, the girl who had asked about being a grandma stayed behind. She had freckles and untied shoes. She walked up and said, "You sound like someone who knows when people are mean." I looked at her. She didn't flinch, just waited. I said, "Sometimes I do." She nodded, like that made sense, then added, "You don't talk scared. You talk like someone who already survived it." And then she left. I sat there a long time. That afternoon, I walked the beach. The wind had teeth, but I didn't mind. The ocean was a kind of company I trusted. Loud, but never rude. Constant, but never demanding. Back at the cottage, the mail had come. A letter from Becca, my niece in Ohio. I hadn't told her everything, only enough. That I'd left. That I was okay. Her note was short. Aunt Maeve, whatever happened, I'm proud of you. Let me know if I can visit. You're not alone. I held the paper in my hand, reread it, folded it back with care. That night, I made pasta. Opened the fiction book I hadn't finished. Lit a candle, not because I needed light, but because I wanted gentleness. The phone stayed off. I didn't miss it. There's a kind of peace that doesn't shout its arrival. It just sits beside you, hands in its lap, and waits for you to notice it's always been possible. The call came on a Sunday. I'd just finished sweeping the porch when the phone, forgotten most of the day, buzzed once, just once, and then went quiet. I didn't check it right away. I made tea first. Set it on the table, pulled my sweater tighter around my shoulders, and sat with the ocean visible between the pine trunks. The waves were slow today, slow like breath. It felt like even the tide had decided to rest. Then I picked up the phone. Lisa. Just one voicemail. No texts. I pressed play. Hi, Mom. I don't even know why I'm calling anymore. Maybe just to say it out loud. She was crying, not loudly, but the kind of crying that comes from exhaustion, not grief. I recognized it. I'd done it in the attic, in bathrooms, in parked cars. I didn't know Owen said that to you, not until later. He didn't tell me. I don't even think he understood how cruel it sounded. But I did. When I heard it, I wanted to take it back, but I can't. Silence. Then, you always helped. Always. I think I just got used to it, and I hate that. I hate that I let myself treat you like you'd always be there, and it wouldn't cost you anything. I didn't mean to make you invisible. I just didn't notice you fading, she breathed. I don't expect you to come back. I don't think I'd have the courage to, if I were you. But I want you to know. I see it now. I see what I did. The line went quiet. Then, softer. I miss you. Owen does too, even if he doesn't know how to say it. I'm sorry, Mom. Click. I sat holding the phone like it had weight. Not anger, not triumph. Just gravity. I didn't cry. I just sat. Later, I opened the drawer where I'd kept the 3 envelopes. One with Lisa's name, one with Andrew's, one with Owen's. Only Owen's had something inside. I took out a new sheet of paper. I didn't write a response. Not yet. I wasn't sure I ever would. But I wrote a sentence to myself. They heard the silence louder than my voice ever reached them. Then I put the paper away. The next day, I walked to the diner, sat at the counter. June was there, sipping coffee, reading yesterday's crossword. She looked at me and said, "You look like someone who just got a letter she didn't expect." I nodded. "Was it kind?" she asked. "Eventually," I said. She smiled. "That's the best kind. The ones that arrive late but honest." We didn't talk much after that. She went back to her crossword. I had eggs and toast. We were just 2 women who had outlived the roles the world assigned to them and found we were still here. That evening, I sat on the porch again. The wind had picked up. The sky had turned the color of oyster shells. I wrapped the blanket tighter around me and thought about what Lisa said. I see it now. That's all I'd ever wanted. Not money, not apology, just recognition. To be seen, not for what I gave, but for who I was before they needed me. The first rain came that night. Not the scattered drizzle I'd grown used to, but a full, clean downpour. Sheets of water slapping the windows, drumming on the tin porch roof, pooling in the dips of the gravel path. I stayed inside, wrapped in Henry's scarf, a book in one hand, the phone, still silent, in the other. I didn't turn it on, not out of spite, just because I didn't want to hear anything more. For once it was enough to live without narrating it. I lit a candle, not for light, but for company. The cottage glowed gold and soft, the way kitchens should glow in stories where no one is afraid to come home. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the fog stayed. I opened the front door and let it in, let it fill the corners, let it sit on the floor like a cat refusing to move. I made coffee, toast, listened to the wood creak beneath me. I loved this place more for its wear. Later, I found myself at the post office. The clerk, a woman named Darlene, had already started recognizing me. "I figured we'd see you today," she said, handing over a single envelope. No return address. Just my name, written in a teenager's awkward print. Owen. I stood outside the post office, letter unopened in my hand. Not because I was afraid of what he'd written, but because I already knew he had written something. That was enough. For now. I walked to the beach, sat on the same driftwood log. The sea was rough today, unapologetic. But I liked it best that way. I opened the letter. It wasn't long. "Grandma, I'm not good at letters, but Mom said if I wanted to understand anything, I had to write you one. So here it is. I didn't mean what I said that night. I mean, I did say it. But I didn't get how bad it was. I just wanted you to go away. I thought you were being annoying. I didn't think about how you felt, or how cold it was. I just didn't care. That's the part that feels the worst now. You used to make me pancakes on my birthday. Remember? You always let me put the syrup on first, even if I made a mess. I thought you were just there, like the couch, like the fridge. Now you're not here, and I feel it everywhere. I don't know how to fix what I did, but I hope you're okay. I hope you found a warm place. I miss you. Owen." I folded the letter slowly. The paper was cheap notebook stock, the kind that wrinkles if your hand sweats while writing. There was no manipulation in it, no plea, just the awkward truth of a boy who had never been taught how to see the people who raised him. I placed the letter back in the envelope and tucked it into my coat. Not everything needs an answer right away. Some things just need time to echo in the air. That night, I brought the letter inside and placed it in the same box as Henry's note. 2 voices, 2 different times, both reminding me I still existed, still mattered. As I lay in bed, I thought about the attic, the cold, the silence, the years I'd mistaken usefulness for love. And I knew I would never go back. Not because I was angry, but because now I understood what warmth truly meant. I mailed my reply on a Monday. Just 1 letter, just 1 page. Not forgiveness, not closure, just truth, offered calmly, like a cup of water set beside a tired traveler. "Owen, I got your letter. I read it slowly, twice. You wrote like someone who was finally looking at the world with both eyes open. I'm glad you did. I don't need you to fix it. I just needed you to see it. That night, when I asked for warmth and you tossed that blanket, it wasn't just the words. It was what they stood on. All the years I was there, and you never thought to wonder if I wanted to be. I gave until I stopped recognizing myself. Now I'm learning to give again, but only what's mine to give. I hope someday you understand that for yourself, too. And Owen, I still love you, but I'm no longer waiting in silence to prove it. I didn't write to Lisa or Andrew. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some letters stay unwritten, not out of resentment, but because the message has already been delivered in the quietest, clearest language. Absence. That afternoon, I made stew. Thick, peppery, the kind Henry would have stirred twice before sneaking a taste. I let it simmer while I sat by the window, notebook open, pen uncapped. I wrote the last line of the page I started months ago. I lived, not just survived, not just endured. I lived. And it was true. Not loudly. Not for applause. Not to prove anything. Just because I'd stopped believing I had to earn my space on the earth. Outside, the fog was lifting. The gulls were back. The tide rolled in, steady and deep, like breath. The cottage was still drafty in the corners. The floor still creaked. But the silence no longer sounded like punishment. It sounded like peace. Later, I went into town. Bought a new scarf from the little shop near the post office. Yellow. Unapologetically bright. The kind of color I never let myself wear when I was trying to disappear. June saw me from the other side of the street. "Nice choice," she called. "You look like someone with a life." I smiled. "I feel like someone who claimed one." She nodded. Didn't press. We understood each other without stories. Back home, I hung the scarf by the door. Then, for the first time since arriving, I lit the porch light. Not for them, not in case they came, but because I was no longer hiding. Because this life, this peace, this quiet act of self-return was something I wanted to see clearly, even in the dark. I sat outside as the sky turned pink, ate a slice of pie, listened to the hum of insects, the occasional bark of a distant dog, the soft thud of my own steady heart, and I thought, let them remember this. Not the woman in the attic, not the one who begged for blankets, but the one who walked out with nothing but a coat, a scarf, and a name she was ready to wear again. If this story found you at the right time, let it stay with you. And if someone made you forget who you were, may today be the first day you remember. Follow for more stories like this. Leave a comment if it echoed. You're not invisible. Not here.